humans are apex predators disguised as diplomats. The galaxy realized too late the Crithian ambassador's head exploded across the negotiation table before anyone could blink. Katie Morrison didn't flinch. She simply reached for a napkin, wiped the purple blood from her cheek, and looked directly at the shocked Valderan representative across from her. "Now that we've established what happens to those who break treaties," Katie said, holstering her plasma pistol beneath her diplomatic jacket, "shall we discuss the mining rights to Sector 7? The Valderan's 3 eyes widened in terror. Around the circular chamber, 12 species sat frozen, their various appendages trembling. They had invited humanity to the Galactic Council 3 years ago, believing humans to be another docile species eager for acceptance. The humans had smiled, signed documents, and spoken of peace with such conviction that every civilization believed them harmless. They were wrong. The Crithians murdered 47 human colonists on Outpost Meridian," Katie continued, her voice steady as ice. "They thought we wouldn't notice. They thought we'd file a complaint through proper channels and wait decades for justice." She smiled, and somehow that smile was worse than any weapon. "We don't wait." The Valderan diplomat, whose name translated to something like whistling through reeds, finally found his voice. "This is barbaric. The Council will hear of this unprovoked attack." "Unprovoked?" Lieutenant Greg Hamilton stepped forward from his position by the door. He'd been so still that half the delegates had forgotten humans posted guards at every meeting. "We have documented evidence of the massacre. 47 civilians, 12 of them children." His hand rested casually on his rifle. The Crithians confessed. They laughed about it. Katie pulled out a small device and projected holographic images into the air. The delegates recoiled at what they saw. Burned homes, bodies. The Crithian strike team posing for photographs. "You invited us to your council because you thought we were weak," Katie said. "You saw our diplomatic corps and assumed we were prey animals dressed in suits. You forgot to study our history." She stood, and despite being smaller than most species present, every delegate leaned back. "Humans spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of killing each other. We built weapons that could end worlds. We created poisons, viruses, strategies of war so terrible we banned ourselves from using them." She walked slowly around the table. No one moved. "Then we found you," she continued. "And we thought, maybe we've evolved past all that. Maybe we can be better. So we came here with open hands and peaceful words." She stopped behind the empty Crithian chair. "But evolution doesn't erase instinct. It just teaches us when to hide our teeth." Katie returned to her seat and folded her hands politely on the table. "Now then," she said brightly, "about those mining rights. I believe we've earned them, don't you think?" The Valderan delegate signed the documents with a shaking appendage. Every other species followed. 3 weeks later, Commander Jake Mitchell stood on the bridge of the Terran vessel Nightfall, watching the Zephron fleet approach. 15 warships, each 3 times the size of his cruiser. The Zephrons had spent 2 centuries conquering 12 star systems through overwhelming force. They believed in strength. They believed in dominance. They believed humans would surrender immediately. "Sir, they're hailing us," Communications Officer Linda Hayes reported. "Put them through." The Zephron War Master appeared on screen, his crimson scales glinting under harsh lighting. "Human vessel, you will surrender your cargo and retreat from this system. This territory now belongs to the Zephron Empire." Jake scratched his chin thoughtfully. "That's interesting. Because we signed a treaty with the previous inhabitants. They seemed pretty happy about our protection agreement." "Treaties mean nothing to the weak," the War Master snarled. "Your ship is alone. My fleet will crush you." "Actually," Jake said, leaning forward in his chair, "we're not alone. You're just not looking in the right places." The War Master laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "Human deception. We've scanned this entire system. There are no other vessels." "You scanned for active ships," Jake agreed. "That was your first mistake." He nodded to his weapons officer. Throughout the system, 17 human vessels powered up simultaneously. They'd been drifting cold and dark, looking like debris or dead hulls. The Zephrons had flown right past them. "Your second mistake," Jake continued as the Zephron's expression shifted from amusement to concern, "was assuming we fight fair. The human ships didn't fire conventional weapons. Instead, they released something the Zephrons couldn't detect until too late. Nanobots, billions of them, programmed with one purpose. Within seconds, they'd infiltrated every Zephron vessel through microscopic gaps in the hull plating." "What are you doing?" the War Master demanded. "Our shields are intact. Our systems show no damage." "That's because we're not damaging your ships," Jake explained calmly. "We're talking to them." Did you know most species build their computers with similar base architecture? Makes them vulnerable to certain types of persuasion. On the Zephron flagship, controls began activating on their own. Lights flickered, then every screen displayed the same message in Zephron script. Hello, your ship belongs to humanity now. Impossible, the War Master breathed. Our systems have triple encryption, quantum locks, biological authentication. Had, Jake corrected, past tense. Here's the thing about humans. We've been hacking each other's systems since we invented systems to hack. We spent centuries in an arms race of digital warfare. Every species we've met uses security protocols we cracked decades before we left Earth. The Zephron warships began turning, their weapons now targeting each other instead of the human vessels. Call them off, the War Master commanded, real fear entering his voice for the first time. This is a violation of interstellar warfare conventions. Jake's expression hardened. You want to talk about conventions? Your people glassed 3 planets last year. Billions dead. But you did it with conventional weapons, so the Council called it war instead of genocide. He stood. Humans don't care about your conventions. We care about results. We'll destroy you, the War Master threatened, though his voice shook. The entire Zephron Empire will hunt your species to extinction. No, you won't. Jake's voice carried absolute certainty. Because you're going to go back to your empire and tell them exactly what happened here. You're going to explain that humanity can take control of any ship, any station, any system you have. You're going to tell them that starting a war with us means every Zephron vessel becomes ours the moment it enters battle. He walked closer to the screen. And then you're going to convince your empire to sign a very specific peace treaty, one that includes reparations to those 3 planets you destroyed, one that puts human observers on your military vessels, one that ensures you never commit genocide again. And if we refuse, Jake smiled that same cold smile Katie Morrison had shown the Council, then every Zephron ship in your entire fleet becomes a weapon pointed at your own worlds. We won't even need to fire a shot. We'll just turn your navy into our navy and let you explain to your people how you gave it to us. The War Master's scales had lost their bright color. You wouldn't. The Council would intervene. The Council is terrified of us, Jake said flatly. They invited us because they thought we'd be grateful little pets. Instead, they got predators smart enough to wear suits and shake hands. Do you know what the most dangerous thing about humans is? It's not our weapons or our technology. It's that we can smile at you during negotiations while planning 17 different ways to kill you if talks fail. He returned to his chair. You have 1 hour to begin your retreat. The nanobots will remain in your systems for the next 6 months. Any aggressive action toward any human interest, and they activate. Any attempt to remove them, and they activate. Any failure to sign that peace treaty, and they activate. This is extortion. No, Jake corrected. This is diplomacy. Human style. Now get out of our system before I decide talking was a waste of time. The Zephron fleet turned and limped away, their ships now loyal to new masters. On the Nightfalls Bridge, the crew watched them go in silence. Lieutenant Sophie Crawford sat in the observation deck of Research Station Omega, staring at the alien artifact they'd discovered 3 days ago. The object hummed with energy that made her teeth ache. Around her, scientists from 7 different species worked frantically to decipher its purpose. The Litherians, an ancient race known for their archaeological expertise, had declared it a religious relic. The Morphids insisted it was a weapon. The humans hadn't said anything yet, which made everyone nervous. Dr. Alex Carter approached, his tablet displaying complex readings. We finished the scans. The Litherians are wrong. This isn't religious. And the Morphids? Also wrong. It's not a weapon. He paused. It's worse. It's a prison. Sophie stood immediately. What's inside? We don't know. But the energy signature suggests whatever it is has been locked away for approximately 50,000 years. Every species here wants to open it. They think it might contain ancient technology or lost knowledge. Do they know it's a prison? I just told the station commander. He dismissed it. Said humans are paranoid and see threats everywhere. Alex met her eyes. He's ordered the opening ceremony to proceed in 2 hours. Sophie grabbed her communicator. This is Crawford to Earth Command. Priority Alpha. We have a situation. The response came within seconds. Admiral Patricia Foster's face appeared on the small screen. Report, Sophie explained quickly. The Admiral listened without interrupting, her expression growing darker with each word. Recommendations? Patricia asked. Evacuate the station. Destroy the artifact. Better safe than extinct. The other species won't allow it. They outnumber us 40-1 on that station. Patricia's fingers drummed against her desk, a gesture Sophie had learned meant the Admiral was calculating odds. How long until the ceremony? 1 hour 53 minutes? Then we have 1 hour 53 minutes to convince them or stop them? Patricia's eyes hardened. I'm sending authorization codes now. Use them if necessary. The connection ended. Sophie looked at Alex. Get our people to the evacuation pods. Quietly. If this goes wrong, I want every human off this station. What are you going to do? What we do best. Improvise. Sophie marched to the central chamber where the artifact sat on a raised platform. The Lytharian High Priest was already positioning ceremonial tools around it. The Morphid Science Director argued with the station commander about proper protocols. Representatives from 5 other species crowded around, all eager to witness history. Stop, Sophie announced, her voice cutting through the chatter. Nobody touches that artifact. The station commander, a Valdrin named Clicking of Stones, turned to her with obvious irritation. Lieutenant Crawford, your concern has been noted and dismissed. This is a scientific matter, not a military one. That's where you're wrong. Sophie pulled out her tablet and projected holographic images into the air. We've analyzed the containment protocols. This prison was designed by a species that could manipulate space-time. The energy requirements alone suggest they needed to lock away something powerful enough to threaten entire civilizations. Speculation, the Lytharian priest scoffed. Humans always assume the worst. Because we've been the worst, Sophie shot back. We know what apex predators look like because we spent millennia being them. And this? She pointed at the artifact. This is all the hallmarks of something so dangerous that an advanced civilization chose to hide it rather than destroy it. Perhaps they couldn't destroy it, the Morphid Director suggested. All the more reason to study it. Sophie's hand moved to her sidearm, a gesture that made everyone step back. I'm not asking any more. I'm telling you. We're evacuating the station and destroying the artifact? You have no authority here, Clicking of Stones insisted, though he kept his distance. This station belongs to the Galactic Council. You cannot simply threaten us into compliance. Watch me. Sophie entered the authorization codes Admiral Foster had sent. Throughout the station, human personnel moved into strategic positions. Emergency bulkheads began sealing, creating isolated sections. I've just declared a Code Black scenario. That means potential extinction level event. Under Council law, any species can invoke it when they detect an existential threat. This is insane, the priest protested. You're holding us hostage over a theory. No, I'm protecting idiots from themselves. Sophie's communicator blinked. Alex had gotten all human personnel to the evacuation pods. Here's what's going to happen. Everyone who wants to live is getting on a shuttle in the next 30 minutes. Then we're going to push this station into the nearest star, artifact and all. The Council will prosecute you for this, Clicking of Stones threatened. You'll start a war. Better than ending a galaxy. Sophie gestured to her team, and they began herding the protesting scientists toward the evacuation bays. Better to be judged by 12 than carried by 6. We'd rather face your council than explain to our children why we let their future get eaten by whatever's in that box. The Morphid Director made a break for the artifact, apparently deciding to open it before being evacuated. He managed 3 steps before Sophie's shot took him in the leg. Non-lethal, but effective. He collapsed, screeching in pain. Anyone else want to test human reflexes? Sophie asked the room. No one moved. Smart. Now move. 43 minutes later, Research Station Omega drifted empty through space. Sophie watched from her shuttle as it fell toward the nearby star, pulled by gravity and human-controlled thrusters. The artifact glowed brighter as it approached the stellar surface, as if aware of its impending destruction. Then it screamed. A sound that shouldn't exist in vacuum somehow reached every ship in the area. A psychic wail of something ancient and terrible realizing it wouldn't escape. The species who'd insisted on opening it sat in shocked silence, finally understanding what they'd almost unleashed. The artifact hit the star's surface and vanished in a flash of light that blinded sensors for 3 full seconds. When vision returned, the star flickered once, twice, then stabilized. Whatever had been imprisoned was gone, consumed by nuclear fire. Sophie let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. Her communicator buzzed. Admiral Foster again. Well done, Lieutenant. Consider yourself promoted to commander. Now get back here. We have a bigger problem. 6 hours later, Sophie stood in a conference room on Earth Command Station, surrounded by the highest-ranking officers in the human military. Admiral Foster pulled up a star chart showing the entire known galaxy. 4 days ago, the hegemony made contact, Foster began. For those who don't know, the hegemony is what happens when a species achieves total unity, 7,000 worlds, one consciousness. They've been observing the galaxy for 2 million years, and they've decided we're all too dangerous to exist. Captain Brian Hughes leaned forward. How do we stack up against them? We don't. Foster's expression was grim. Their technology is roughly 1,000 years ahead of ours. Their fleets number in the tens of thousands. They can manufacture ships faster than we can destroy them. And they've given the galaxy one choice: submit to assimilation or face extinction. What about the Council? Sophie asked. The Council is debating. They'll probably still be debating when the hegemony arrives to wipe them out. Foster pulled up tactical projections. Most species are preparing to surrender. They figure assimilation is better than death. The Zephrons have already switched sides, hoping to be absorbed rather than destroyed. Cowards, muttered Lieutenant Danny Foster, no relation to the Admiral. Smart cowards, Foster corrected. The math doesn't work. We can't win this fight. So we're here to discuss surrender terms? Sophie asked, though something in Foster's tone suggested otherwise. The Admiral smiled, and Sophie recognized that expression. She'd worn it herself 3 times in the last month. We're here to discuss how to kill something that can't be killed. 'Cause humans don't surrender. We just get creative. She pulled up classified files marked with security levels Sophie had never seen. 70 years ago, when we first achieved faster-than-light travel, we found something. An abandoned facility on a dead world. Inside were weapons so terrible that every species before us had chosen to lock them away rather than use them. Weapons designed by a civilization that fought something worse than the hegemony and won. The Destroyer Archive, breathed Colonel Ryan Bennett. I thought that was a myth. It was very real. And very forbidden. The Council made us promise never to access it. They said those weapons violated every moral and ethical standard, that using them would make us monsters. Foster met each officer's eyes in turn. They were probably right. But the hegemony isn't giving us the luxury of morality. She displayed images of complex devices that hurt to look at. These weapons don't just kill, they unmake. They reach back through time and erase the target's ability to have ever existed. They collapse probability fields until reality itself rejects the enemy. They turn space inside out and trap entire fleets in dimensions where the laws of physics don't apply. That's horrific, Sophie said quietly. Yes, Foster agreed. That's why we're the only ones who'll use them. Every other species in this galaxy evolved as prey or as predators who eventually learned restraint. Only humans spent our entire history perfecting the art of absolute destruction. Only we're willing to become the monsters needed to stop worse monsters. She pulled up deployment plans. We have 3 weeks before the hegemony fleet arrives. In that time, we're going to do 3 things. First, we evacuate every human colony to hidden facilities. Second, we convince the Council to evacuate their civilians too, though most probably won't listen. Third, we prepare to deploy these weapons at strategic points throughout the galaxy. What's the collateral damage? Captain Hughes asked. Total. These weapons don't discriminate. Anything within light years of deployment gets erased. That's why we're evacuating. That's why we need to position them perfectly. Foster's voice hardened. And that's why only humans can make this choice. Because we're willing to burn down the galaxy to save it. What about after? Sophie asked. If we survive, won't the Council see us as the true threat? They already do, Foster admitted. But they'll be too grateful to be alive to do anything about it. And if they're not grateful, she shrugged, then we'll have proven we can defend ourselves against anything. Over the next 3 weeks, humanity moved with terrifying efficiency. Colonies vanished overnight. Evacuation ships shuttled billions to locations only humans knew. The Council watched in confusion as humanity's territory appeared to empty itself. The hegemony arrived exactly on schedule. 7,000 warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel at strategic points across the galaxy. Their collective consciousness broadcast a single message to all species: submit or perish. Most species prepared to submit. A few, inspired by human stubbornness, prepared to fight knowing they'd lose. The humans did neither. Instead, Captain Nicole Sanders sat in a stealth ship positioned between 2 of the largest hegemony fleets. In her hands was a device no bigger than a briefcase. The weapon looked almost mundane, like it couldn't possibly do what the specifications claimed. "This is Sanders to all units," she said into her communicator. "Weapons are in position, awaiting final authorization." On Earth Command Station, Admiral Foster looked at the galaxy map one last time. Red dots showed hegemony positions. Blue dots showed human weapon placements. In 3 minutes, most of those red dots would cease to have ever existed. The weapons would reach back through time and prevent the hegemony ships from ever arriving. The crews would still exist, but they'd remember a different present, one where their fleets vanished en route for inexplicable reasons. It was cruel. It was necessary. It was human. Authorization confirmed, Foster said. Fire when ready. Nicole activated her weapon. Across the galaxy, 47 other humans did the same. The devices hummed with power that reality itself seemed to resist. For a moment, nothing happened. Then space folded wrong. Time stuttered. The universe screamed in protest at what humans were forcing it to do. The hegemony fleets blinked out of existence. Not destroyed, erased. They'd never been there. But the humans remembered both timelines, protected by the same technology that powered the weapons. To everyone else in the galaxy, 7,000 hegemony warships had simply failed to arrive. Sensor logs showed them entering faster than light travel, then nothing. No emergence. No distress signals. Just absence. The hegemony consciousness reeled from the loss. 7,000 ships and their crews gone without explanation. They sent scouts. The scouts vanished too, erased before they could report what the humans had done. Each attempt to investigate resulted in more disappearances, until the hegemony realized they were facing something that defied their understanding of warfare. 3 days after the weapons fired, the hegemony sent a communication to Earth Command. For the first time in their 2-million-year history, they requested negotiation instead of demanding surrender. Admiral Foster sat across from the hegemony's chosen representative, a being that looked vaguely humanoid but spoke with the voice of billions. Behind her stood Katie Morrison, Jake Mitchell, Sophie Crawford, and 12 other officers who'd proven humanity's capacity for calculated violence. "We don't understand what you did," the representative said. "Our ships entered your territory." Then they ceased to exist across multiple timelines simultaneously. This should be impossible. It was impossible, Foster agreed. Until we made it possible. That's what humans do. We look at impossible problems and solve them anyway. You've violated fundamental laws of reality. The damage to space-time could be catastrophic. So could letting you assimilate the galaxy. Foster leaned back in her chair. You gave us 2 choices. Submit or die. We chose option 3. We invented a new way to fight that you couldn't counter. The representative's form flickered, showing distress. You could destroy everything. These weapons, if used carelessly, could unravel causality itself. B, we know. Foster's voice carried no apology. That's why we're not careless. We calculated every deployment. We chose targets that would minimize timeline corruption. We made hard choices to save billions of lives. She paused, but make no mistake. If you threaten this galaxy again, we'll use them again. And next time we won't be as careful. The silence stretched between them. Finally, the representative spoke. What do you want? A treaty. Real peace, not assimilation. You leave the independent species alone. In exchange, we don't erase your entire civilization from history. That's extortion. Katie Morrison stepped forward. No, that's diplomacy. You're just used to being the ones making threats instead of receiving them. The hegemony representative studied the humans for a long moment. Your species is young, you've barely left your world, and already you've created weapons that terrify civilizations millions of years old. What will you become given time? That depends on you, Foster replied. Give us peace, and we'll use that time to build and explore. Force us to fight, and we'll use it to develop even worse weapons. Humans are adaptable. We become what we need to be. You're predators pretending to be diplomats. We're diplomats who remember how to be predators, Sophie corrected. There's a difference. We prefer peace. We just refuse to die for it. The hegemony signed the treaty 3 hours later. As the representative departed, Jake Mitchell approached Foster. Do you think they'll honor it? For now, Foster said. They're scared. That gives us time. Time for what? To prepare for whatever comes next. Something always comes next. She looked at the star chart showing the known galaxy. We've made ourselves the galaxy's apex predators. Every species now knows what humans can do when threatened. Some will fear us. Some will hate us. Some will try to eliminate us before we become a bigger threat. So we'll need to stay ready, Sophie concluded. Always. Foster turned to face her officers. Humanity didn't come to the stars seeking war. We came hoping to be better than we were. But the galaxy didn't let us be better. It forced us to be what we've always been, survivors who will do anything, sacrifice anything, become anything to protect our own. Katie Morrison nodded slowly. The other species see us as monsters now. Maybe, Foster admitted, but they're alive to think it. That's more than the hegemony would have given them. She dismissed the officers and stood alone in the conference room, looking at Earth through the viewport. On that blue world, humans went about their lives unaware of how close they'd come to extinction. Children played, artists created, scientists discovered, dreamers dreamed. All of it protected by people willing to make impossible choices and live with the consequences. Foster thought about the weapons, now safely locked away again. They'd violated physics, morality, and every principle of civilized warfare. Using them made humanity no better than the threats they faced, but it kept humanity alive. It kept their children safe. It gave them a future. Was that enough to justify what they'd done? Foster didn't know. History would judge them eventually. For now, she had one job: ensure there was a future for history to exist in. She turned from the viewport and walked back to her command center. Somewhere in the galaxy, the next threat was already forming. The next crisis would emerge. The next impossible choice would need to be made. And humanity would be ready, because that's what apex predators do. They adapt. They survive. They win. Even when winning requires becoming the monsters everyone feared they were all along. The galaxy had learned its lesson too late. Humans were never the diplomatic species they appeared to be. They were predators who'd learned to shake hands and smile while planning 17 different ways to end any threat. They were survivors who'd turned extinction-level events into negotiating tactics. They were the species who looked at impossible odds and said, "Not today." The Council would remember. The hegemony would remember. Every civilization would pass down the story of how humanity saved the galaxy by threatening to destroy it, and humans would continue being exactly what they'd always been. Apex predators, disguised as diplomats, waiting patiently for the next species to forget that simple truth.